Good morning, dear students, teachers, and speakers. My name is Hauna Dintoa, and I'm a journalist, and I've been mandated by the UNESCO campus team to host this session. I'd like to welcome you to this session that tackles building the future, innovation and sustainable development. Technologies and innovations are transforming our world at a rapid pace, creating new opportunities for the way we produce, communicate, travel, and live together. Now, in the face of environmental and social challenges, these innovations are not an end to themselves, but powerful tools that can help us imagine solutions that are both sustainable and fair. Now, this brings us to an important question. How can we innovate to build a future that is both more sustainable and more equitable? Now, sustainable development encourages us to think more deeply about the choices we make and the priorities we set. Innovation, whether social, economic, or environmental, can become a powerful driver for creating responsible and inclusive solutions. But shaping the future isn't something that only experts can do. It concerns all of you as well. Now, this campus is an opportunity to better understand these challenges and to reflect on the role you want to play starting today as part of this change that we want to see happening. Now, today's discussion will be structured around three main themes. First, we'll explore what sustainable development means and why it has become such a key global issue. And this we will do with William Savard, who is the project assistant in the Education for Sustainable Development Division of UNESCO's education sector. Then, we're also going to look at technological innovation and how different choices can lead to different impacts depending on context and needs with Ayumi Moore Aoki, who's the founder and president of Women in Tech. And finally, we'll focus on your role as young people and how your personal choices and actions can make you active citizens in a changing world with Yelena Zelenovic, who's the program specialist in global citizenship and peace education at UNESCO. Now, for this session, I'm delighted to welcome four schools. This is the Ajara Senior Grammar School, who are in Badagry, Lagos, Nigeria, represented by Michael Foloroshu, who is the chemistry teacher, and his 9th grade students. The two student spokespeople are Akonde and Vince. We also have the ICS London in United Kingdom, who are represented by Ilaria Malozi and her 11th grade class. The two spokespeople will be Sana and Neil. We also have the English International School in Cotonou, Benin, who are represented by Ernest Agiman Dua, who's the English teacher, and his 9th and 10th grade students. The two spokespeople are Laren and Serena. Now, we also then have the Kerala Public School, who are from Jashanpur, India, represented by Shubha Shobi, who's the science teacher, and her 11th grade class. Now, the two spokespeople are Mishra and Kumari. Now, thank you so much for all of you for being with us today. I'd like to thank the schools who are following this session through the chat and who also have the opportunity to interact with our speakers, and we really look forward to that. Now, before we dive into the topic and give you the floor, I invite you to watch a short video presenting UNESCO, that is the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, and its main priority missions. Let's check it out.
After 2 world wars in less than 30 years, UNESCO was born of a clear vision to achieve lasting peace. Economic and political agreements among states are not enough. We must bring people together and strengthen the intellectual and moral solidarity of humankind through mutual understanding and dialogue between cultures.
In consequence thereof, they do hereby create the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization.
Over the years, UNESCO has launched pioneering programs to achieve this. We mobilized philosophers, artists, intellectuals from every nation. From the very beginning, we debunked racist theories and we developed innovative projects that changed the world. The Universal Copyright Convention, Biosphere Reserves, World Heritage Sites, and the very notion of living heritage. We gave rise to global centers of scientific research from CERN to Sesame, developed tsunami early warning systems, wrote the general history of Africa and all 5 continents, and carried out literacy campaigns of unprecedented scale in Italy, in the Republic of Korea, and Afghanistan. UNESCO established universal principles for scientific ethics and the human genome, and protects the best that humanity has to offer. The temples of ancient Egypt saved from rising waters, the treasures of Venice, of Angkor, and the old bridge of Mostar rebuilt after war. Faced with the challenges of our age, UNESCO's mandate is more relevant than ever. And with all our member states, UNESCO continues to lead the way forward. We are imagining the futures of education to navigate to our new world and to live in peace with others and with the planet. We are establishing common standards on open science and the ethics of artificial intelligence. We are developing new tools to fight new forms of racism, hate speech, and misinformation. On the ground, in Beirut and Mosul, to reinvigorate cultural life and build lasting peace. Our mission remains essential. The world needs education, science, culture, and information. Our world, our humanity.
Thank you so much once again to all of you for joining us today. Now, to begin our session, let's start with an important starting point. What is sustainable development? And why is it important to raise awareness among young people about these issues? To help us explore this question, I'm pleased to now give the floor to William Savard, who is Project Assistant in the Education for Sustainable Development Division of UNESCO's education sector. Now, William Savard previously worked as a biology teacher and as a researcher in agroecology. He recently joined UNESCO's Education for Sustainable Development, that is the ESD team, to help empower young people and mainstream sustainable development in education. He's passionate about biology and pedagogy. William is committed to making knowledge about nature and the environment accessible to as many people as possible. Let me just start by welcoming you, William. Thank you so much for joining us here today for this session. We're looking forward to your insight, but perhaps let's start with the very most basic question. What is sustainable development?
Well, that's a pretty good question. Actually, it's not that simple of a question, but that's why we'll deep dive into it. So sustainable development is a term we hear all the time. It's everywhere. We need to have sustainable project, etc. But what does it mean in reality? So that term, sustainable development, it comes in the basis from the Brundtland Report in 1987. And then it's a concept that evolved, and recently you might have heard about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 SDGs. That's, we could say, the most contemporary form of sustainable development that we have these days. And among those goals, you have goals such as no poverty, quality education, clean energy, climate action, etc. I invite you to have a look to the 17 if ever you're curious. But if we go back to the roots of the term, so we have sustainable and development. Well, if we start with development, it mainly talks about developing economies and societies. So wherever you live, we work to try to make a better world. We want to have better quality of life, better infrastructures, institutions. So we are trying to develop our societies. But thing is, we live in a finite world where there are resources that are non-renewable. And therefore, you cannot develop infinitely. And this is where the sustainability terms becomes very relevant, because when you develop, you want to do so in a way that is sustainable in time. So you want to develop, but you do not want to encroach on the capacity of future generations to be able to do so. And well, sustainable development is based on three main pillars. There is the economic pillar, social pillar, and the environmental pillar. Let's begin with the economic pillar, and just to define it a bit. So economics is not always about big business and banks and etc. Economic, actually, if you go back to the Greek root of the word, it comes from oikos, which is house, and nomos, which is manage. So economics is how do you manage your house? How do you manage your city, your country, or bigger? So it's more about numbers and managing than just money, we could say. So if we want to do something that is sustainable in an economic way, then you might want to have decent work for everyone. You might have a responsible production and an economic system that will be resilient. And in most time, we also aim for economic growth and prosperity. But nowadays, there are also some economists that suggest that in developed countries, maybe we should not aim for economic growth, but rather for degrowth. And that's a new economic trend that we are hearing these days. Otherwise, on the social side, well, we are 8 billion human on the earth, so many people, we need to respect each other. So we want things to be sustainable in the social aspect. So it means by respecting human rights, having inclusive policies, the respect of different cultures, and essential services such as education, health, etc. And then the main one three of them are equally important, but the one we always hear about is environment, and we are nowadays beginning to feel the consequences. And while it's to take action against climate change, try to protect biodiversity, and while when we exploit resources, trying to do so in a sustainable way.
Okay, now, William, why do we see or are we seeing sustainable development in this era as such a major global issue?
Yeah, well, thing is, unfortunately, we could say that previous generations kind of developed and exploited resources in an unsustainable way, careless way. Well, back in the days, we didn't know, so we cannot be mad at them. But nowadays, we need to take actions because we are now facing the consequences of these acts. And while we are facing many socio-ecological challenges nowadays, there is climate change that you most all have heard of. So we emit greenhouse gases that increase the temperature of the globe. And from this increase in energy on the Earth, it messes a bit the climate and how it regulates usually. And that's why we see meteorological phenomena such as droughts, inundations, heat waves, etc. And apart from that, when we develop too much, destroy natural habitat, then we also have a loss of biodiversity. And well, maybe some people could say, it's not too bad, it's just animals and trees, and it's not the problem. But actually, that biodiversity is pretty important because in many cases, those resources are useful for agriculture, or they can be useful for medicine, or we don't see it, but nature gives us so many ecosystemic services that we do not know, that when we lose it, then we realize that it's a pretty big deal, we could say. And then there is also pollution. So we emit pollutants in the air, pollutants in the water. Sometimes you want to go out and the air quality is pretty bad. So that's very unfortunate and sad for us. And then if we have loss in biodiversity or lesser quality of ecosystems, then some new diseases can arise. That was the case with COVID-19, which was a zoonose. So it's a disease that came from wild animals to human. So those challenges also affect our health, or be it, by example, also with water, air quality. If we drink or breathe bad quality air or water, then it affects our health. And well, all those problems in the end can cause problem in communities, can increase inequalities, and then can cause violence as well. And why is it a global issue? Well, thing is, climate change does not care about borders. You emit greenhouse gases, pollutant, it can go anywhere. And droughts, heat waves, they will go anywhere as well. And a topic that I want to go real quick on is also since climate change and those challenges do not care about borders, there's a concept that we call climate justice, where thing is that in developed countries in the north, those are the countries that emit the most greenhouse gases, but unfortunately, it is usually the southern countries, because of their geographic position, that will uh, be impacted the most by all those challenges. So there is an injustice, whereas the main responsible of climate change are not the ones who who feel it the most in their life.
Wow. Now, William, thank you so much for sharing such great insight, as you lay the groundwork for our discussion. You just mentioned why we're seeing sustainable development as a major global issue, but how then do we educate ourselves on sustainable development?
That's a good point. And then you might be wondering, how am I supposed to become an expert in economy, in sociology, in sciences? Well, you don't need to be an expert to become a good, sustainable citizen if you want. But so thing is just to be curious, trying to inform yourself, and also to be mindful about your choices is a pretty good start. Then part of our job in the Education for Sustainable Development team at UNESCO is to try to mainstream education for sustainable development in the curricula in the world. So thing is, we go to school to become citizens of our world. And then, well, since we now live in a world where socio-ecological challenges are the main challenges that we have to face in the future, it's pretty important to be equipped to face it. So, well, our work, we try to work with schools such that you go to schools where you can get equipped with the knowledge, skills, values, attitudes, and behaviors so that you can make intelligent and sustainable choices in the future. I use this point also to tell you, to every student or also your teachers, if ever you are curious or would like to have more sustainable activities in your school, we have many tools on the web at UNESCO, or you or your teachers could also write me an email. I'd be glad to cover up with you about that, because there is still a lot of work to do towards ESD. Because, for example, 73% of countries in the world do not have a low level of green content inclusion into their national curriculum. So that's mean you go to school and then you get out of it and you're not really well equipped to face all those ecological problems. And it's only 37% of teachers that feel comfortable to teach about climate change. So there is a lot of work to do about that. So this is in your school. You are the students. You are the most important person in those schools. So if ever this is a topic that interests you, talk about it to your teacher, to your principal. I'm sure they will listen to you. But otherwise, okay, I know when I was your age, I don't really like school, even though it has its benefits. It's nice to see our friends. But then on your own, you can also try to learn on the internet or at the library if you read about environment or biology or sociology, etc. And well, I have a teacher that told me back in the days that in 2026, ignorance is a choice, because on the internet, we can now have access to everything. You have libraries at your school, so the power is in your hand to try to empower yourself towards sustainable development. Where most of us are on the social media, most of the time we consume content on the internet that is not that relevant, but maybe you can try to find some positive influencers or new topics or chains on internet that talk about environment. I'm sure that will equip you with pretty good knowledge and maybe ideas to change things in your community.
William, thank you so much, for doing such a great job laying the groundwork for a session today by defining sustainable development, why it's crucial, and also giving practical tips to our students as far as how they can then educate themselves. We're going now into the question and answer session with the students, and I'm looking forward to finding out what they would like to know. But also let me remind the students who are joining us as well, who may not be on screen. I just want to say to you guys, know that you're also part of this session, and you can share your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that I also pass them on to our speakers and have them answer. Let me just go to Sana and Neil, who are at the ICS London, which is a school in London in the United Kingdom. Guys, Sana and Neil, please ask a question to William following his presentation. What is it that you'd like to know? What would you like him to elaborate on? What are some of the things that you've also just been wondering about sustainable development that you'd like to know from him?
So we were wondering, how can we as a school spread awareness to our community within the school?
This is a pretty good question. I will not go too far in that because I know that the third person will talk more about action, but how you can do. I think, well, something that I often hear and I think is very inspiring is the best way I think is to organize. So it can sound very simple, but get with a couple of friends, maybe find a teacher or parents that want to support you. And then thing is, as young people, you're maybe not aware of that, but you have some kind of aura that people will most definitely try to jump in and help you in your project. So I think the good idea would be organize, find a couple of friends, have a good plan, and then if it comes from you, from the roots, the students, and you go to your principal or your teacher with a project, I mean, they cannot say no. Or if they say no, well, organize, have an idea, bring it up, and as youth, you have a pretty good power, I think.
Thank you so much to you guys. This is Sana and Neil at the ICS London School. Let's find out from you, Larine and Serena at the English International School in Cotonou, Benin. Do you have a question for William? What would you like William to, share with you beyond his presentation? Please share your question.
So these days, there are many jobs that aren't sustainable due to the rise of AI, leaving students confused regarding their choice of career. What role do you think sustainable development can play in enlightening students, especially regarding higher education and their future?
Mm-hmm. This is such a good question. It could also be a philosophical question. Because, you're young, I'm still young, and then you go to school and you don't really know what's going to happen in 10 years after you finish high school, start university, maybe do a master, etc. So it might be a good idea to try to think about a little bit in the future, even though we do not really know what's going to happen, especially with the rise of AI. Is it just a bubble that goes really up and then might go down? We don't know what's going to happen on that way. But then I think this is a very personal question. And I think there are two schools of philosophy that way. You can try to do something that comes from your heart and really interest you, or you can also think more about the career opportunities that come with it. Sometimes it's a good idea to do a compromise within both. But yes, with the rise of AI, it's a good idea to think about it. And also, I would like to bring that it is not because the job is regarding AI or the cloud or technology that it's green, because sometimes you think, oh, it's the future, there's no paper, we are saving the world, but actually there is a pretty good carbon footprint of all that is technology and AI. So if we think about sustainable development, it's good to be critical about all those technological innovations as well.
Right. Now, perhaps let me also urge you once again, if you're joining us online, that you are part of this discussion and we look forward to engaging with you as well. Feel free to share your question in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And while, we wait for you to share your questions, let me just go back to Akonde and Vince in Lagos, Nigeria at the Ajara Senior Grammar School. I'd like to believe you probably have a question now for William. Let me hand over to you guys to ask William a question. What would you like to know, following his presentation? What is it that you want to know about sustainable development, guys?
My question is, as we embrace AI and high techs to meet the SDGs for the 2030, how do we make sure that people in rural areas or places that are not well developed, how do we make sure that no one is left behind in this innovation?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, thank you. So as we embrace AI and high tech, how do we make sure that everyone is included into that? We could even call it a revolution. This is a pretty good question because, the access to technologies, AI, energy, internet, is not the same anywhere. So I think this is some kind of dilemma or challenge that needs some kind of more a bird view and a backward perspective. And so usually those access will be more easy in the big centers, but at the same time, those technology can be quite useful in rural areas as well. There is a big agricultural innovation that is going on with AI, with new technologies in agriculture. So there again, I think it would be some society choices to decide that this need to be fair and inclusive for everyone, and to not simply let this train go really fast and just take people in the city, but try to have some kind of justice, inclusivity, where the costs and the benefits of technology and AI will be shared. So I think this is a pretty big challenge for individual as well, but in some kind of bigger organized way, such as government, etc., then that will be a way. But this is a very good question, and actually, I raise my hat to already have this thinking about inclusivity to care about everyone, not just in the cities but also in the rural side. It's very interesting.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Now I'm also going to hand over to Mishra and Kumari, who at the Kerala School in India. Mishra and Kumari, please feel free to ask William your question. What would you like to know?
My question is, if sustainable development is truly working, then why do the communities closest to natural resources often remain the least developed?
So why does communities closer to natural resources stay the least developed? That's a pretty good remark and question. So I think I'm not an economist, but I will try to answer your question. So there is what we call different levels in economy, where you have the basic level, which is usually when you exploit natural resources. Then you have the second level, where it is more about transforming those resources. And the third level is more about selling or services, or so, yeah, I would say services. So an additional value on top of that. And most of the time, thing is that through the going of resources through all these levels, well, there is what they call an additional value. So usually when you're at the third level with services, there is more value added. So, and it's usually jobs in the cities, etc. So it might be one of the reasons why cities are more developed and there is more resources there. Is it fair or not? I'm not here to judge about that today, but I would say that this is one of the parts that could answer your question. And then, is sustainable development working? Well, nowadays we see that greenhouse gases emissions are still going really up. We are still encroaching into natural habitat. We are more and more producing plastic, polluting. So does it work? If it was really applied, people, and when I say people, and that's just the youth, it is adults, it is people that decides for us in governments. If really we apply sustainable development and respect the environment and social realities in a sustainable economic way, then there's a way to protect people and the environment. But unfortunately, as of right now, we are still developing too fast in a non-sustainable way. So right now, there is a problem. It does not really work. But if we do the right things, of course, it can work, and we can reverse our greenhouse gases emissions and also our impact on the environment. So does it work right now? It does not. But of course, if we are well equipped and make the good decisions, it can work.
Right, great. And thank you so much, guys, for asking such engaging questions so far. We're going to head over to our Q&A section. I mentioned that we have an audience who may not be on screen, but they're with us either way. This is a question coming in from the Durban International School in Tanzania. The question is, how do we help to build sustainable worldviews with our peers when a lot of the systems already in place center around economic development as a growth metric? This is to you, William.
Wow. All of you have very good questions. But yes, and this is really relevant because now we live in a world with a paradigm of infinite growth where we always need new stuff. We live in a world where it seems that we always need to have more. But maybe the big question is, do we really need more? And so the system, the way it is made right now, seems to, it needs to develop indefinitely. So, it is also why, as I mentioned earlier, why some economists are now talking about degrowth rather than infinite growth, because as of right now, we are developing a lot. And in some cases, it's normal and it's a good thing. In some, we could question it. But thing is that with climate change and while resources that are non-renewable, at one point we might face a wall. So that's why some economics say, rather than having to face a forced degrowth because of climate change and environmental disasters, maybe we should, as societies everywhere in the globe, decide to slow down and degrowth, and rather than producing cars or things that we do not know, maybe we should produce music, guitars, jokes. Well, we can produce and live a good life in a different way. So, but this is a very good and deep question.
All right, William, thank you so much for sharing such great insight, and really just getting the ball rolling for our discussion today. We really appreciate all the insight that you shared and also engaging with our students as they were asking questions. Thank you to the students as well for such thought-provoking questions. We look forward to getting more of them, and also to you guys who are joining us online. Remember, the Q&A section is there for you to ask your questions, so please feel free to also join in. William, thank you so much. You've shared really, really great insight with us this morning.
Thanks to you, and thank you to all the students.
All right. Now, wonderful. We're moving on to the next speaker right now, and we're turning our second theme turning to our second theme, which is technological innovation. Now, here we're going to explore how every technological choice reflects certain priorities and can have economic, social, and environmental consequences with impacts that always depend on how the technology is used and the context in which it is applied. To guide us through this topic, I'm delighted right now to welcome Ayumi Moore Aoki, who is the founder and CEO of Women in Tech, an international organization dedicated to reducing gender inequalities in technology and promoting women's inclusion across the global digital sector. With more than 20 years of experience in the tech ecosystem, Ayumi works with companies, institutions, and youth to ensure that innovation becomes a powerful driver of fairness and social change. Through the education, mentorship, and awareness programs, Women in Tech operates in over 60 countries and engages a community of several million members. We're so glad to have you with us here today, Ayumi, and we look forward to the insight that you're going to share with us. And let's go straight into it. Now, my first question to you is, which technologies are currently being mobilized to address sustainable development challenges and the sustainable development goals, the SDGs?
Well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I'm talking to you from France, but I'd like to start with something that might surprise you. In fact, the technologies tackling the biggest global challenges sometimes are not the flashiest ones. They're often the smartest ones, but they're not super flashy. For example, if you look at the solar energy and mini grids, so you have countries like in Nigeria, in Benin, millions of people, they still don't have, reliable electricity sometimes, depending on the zones where they live in. So you have companies, different companies, Lumos and different companies in Nigeria or in other countries who are providing these solar panels that families can pay for very little by using their mobile phones. So there's no massive infrastructure that's needed. You have clean energy, and it's directly available to the people where the people live, right? So that's SDG 7, which is affordable and clean energy. And this is really how you can see it in action. You know, you have a solar panel, you can pay by the phone, and then the person and the family has access to this clean energy. Second, you can also see a lot of AI. So what does AI mean? So artificial intelligence. And AI can be used in many, many different fields. It goes from admin work, it goes to health, but it can also be done and can also be used a lot in agriculture. So I think this is where it can be quite interesting. So if you look at countries like, let's say, India, there's a startup that uses artificial intelligence to help the farmers predict the weather patterns. You know, they are going to be detecting the crop diseases very early. They're going to be increasing their yields. They're going to be, so without using more water or without using more pesticides, the yields are going to be much bigger and they're going to be making more money. And so the farmers, they get advice directly on a very basic smartphone. And so that ticks the boxes for SDGs 2 and 13. So you have like zero hunger, and it's also good for the climate action, working together. So AI can be seen and can be used in things like health as well as agriculture. And then the third is the one that's really closer to my heart. It's about digital education platforms. You know, at Women in Tech, our mission is really to empower women and girls and people from all genders all around the world to embrace technology in different ways. So we work with partners across the 60 countries to train these young women with digital skills. So whether it's coding, blockchain, data, AI, cybersecurity, you name it. Because access to knowledge in itself is a technology, right, that changes lives. So that's SDG 4 and SDG 5, which is quality education for everybody, as well as gender equality. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is that, you know, technology is everywhere. Sometimes you don't even realize it's technology, but we use it in many different places to fight for sustainable development. But the question is always, you know, who gets access to it and then who's going to be benefiting this technology.
Really interesting, Ayumi, and thank you so much for, pouring into us right from the beginning. Now, I'm wondering what criteria allow us to evaluate technology beyond its technical performance?
Well, great question. And this is something I really feel very strongly about, you know, because in the tech world, we talk a lot about performance. How fast is it? How powerful is it? How profitable it is? Many people think just money, money, money. But I want you to think like responsible innovators. So here are the 3 questions I always ask myself when I evaluate a technology I'm going to be using. So the first question is, who is it for? So technology might be brilliant, but if it only serves people who are already wealthy or who are already connected, it's not solving the world's problems, right? It's deepening the gap. So for example, when ChatGPT launched, it was available for only one handful of languages. So that immediately excluded billions of people around the world. So we need to ask, is this technology inclusive? So since then, it has evolved, thank goodness, but this is the questions you have to have from the start. Now, who is it for? Does it include everyone? And the question 2 is, what is the environmental cost? Because we know that training a single large AI model can produce as much carbon as 5 cars, during their entire life. Or if you look at the data center, it consumes, because data centers, they need to be cool. They need to be like in a constant temperature. But they need so much energy that it's very, very hot. So they use water to cool it down. But one data center can consume as much water as a whole small city, right? So when we say that technology is clean or it's smart, we need to look at the full picture. Now, the energy, the water, the rare minerals that it's used in the devices. And then question 3 is, does it respect the people's rights and people's dignity? Facial recognition, for example, technology can be very accurate, but sometimes it was not trained in an inclusive manner, with taking in consideration people's different cultures from around the world. So, for example, Black women had a rate of 35 times higher than white men by being recognized. So some applications that were only be able to be open or be used through facial recognition was not available, was not trained for everybody's faces. So inclusion, environmental impact, human rights, those are the three criteria that I really look for beyond technical performance.
Inclusion, environmental impact, and human rights. And let's now go to a third question, Ayumi. Why should we then be cautious about the idea of a single technological solution to complex problems?
Oh, that's a good one. So I'm going to ask you a question. How would you feel? Would you feel comfortable if one single person controlled all the water supply in your entire city? No, probably not.
Absolutely not.
Because if they make a mistake or they decide that, to use that power for their own benefit, everyone suffers and there's no backup. So the same logic applies to technology. Right now, we have a very small number of companies and a very small number of countries that concentrate enormous power over the technologies that shape our lives every single day. So we have a handful of platforms that are deciding what information billions of people see every day. A handful of companies are racing to control artificial intelligence. And when you see that, that's so much power that comes out of it. It's only sitting in very few hands. Something very important is at risk. And we call this sovereignty. Now, perhaps you have heard about what sovereignty is from history or geography class. And it means that it's a country's sovereignty is a word that means it's a country's right to govern itself, to make its own decisions, and not to be controlled by outside forces. And so today we need to apply that same concept to technology, to have digital sovereignty or have technological sovereignty. Because if you think about it, your country's hospitals run on software owned by a foreign company. So who decides when it's gonna get updated, Who has access to that patient data? Now, what happens if that company decides to cut access because of the trade dispute, or because simply it's no longer profitable for them? If you look at internet connections, we've seen with the geopolitical crisis we have in the world right now, some countries have been cut off internet for many different reasons. Sometimes it's because of the country itself decides to cut, their internet connections. Sometimes it's because another outside supplier that decides, well, you should not have internet connection. So these are things that are affecting entire populations today. So it's not hypothetical, right? We have the African Union that has been raising these exact concerns about data sovereignty, the idea that data generated by these exact concerns about data sovereignty, they should be taken care of. And also the second reason I would say is that when something goes wrong, you need to have alternative paths. You have a system with only one solution, one supplier, one route is fragile. And this we saw during the COVID-19 crisis with the vaccine supply chains. Countries that had diversified their options survived better than those who had put the trust in only one source, of production. And then I think the third and the last reason is that one solution simply can't fit everybody's realities, right? So the challenges you face in Lagos are not the same you're going to be having in London or somewhere else in the world, So if you have like flooding in Cotonou, will require completely different thinking than you have a drought in somewhere in India. So a technology that's designed somewhere by someone in Silicon Valley is going to be answering the questions for that specific need and their experiences in their climate and their reality. Well, in the world, we have many different realities, and they should be able to answer to all of these different realities.
Makes so much sense. Thank you so much for giving us such great insight, such practical insight, and for enlightening us on a subject that you're so passionate about, Ayumi. And this is now leading us to engagement with our students. Let's find out what it is that they would like to find out from you. And we're going to start with you, Mishra and Kumari at Kerala Public School in India. Let's just start with the question that you have for Ayumi. What would you like to know, guys?
The question from my side is that how can we apply the concept of reduce, reuse, and recycle to a circular economy, and what are the potential benefits and the challenges of implementing such a system on a large scale?
So circular economy is used more and more, and I think it's one of the answers that we can have on a local small scale, but as well as on a large scale. And I give an example. It comes from an example from the Northern Hemisphere in a country because I have worked with them and I see how it works. So for example, you have a data center in Iceland, right? And as I explained earlier on, the data centers, they make a lot of, it's a very energy consuming because it needs a lot of, because it's quite cold, it's quite, makes a lot of energy, so it makes a lot of heat, and it's quite energy consuming. And so, but in Iceland, can you imagine, it's very, very cold out there. So they don't need to use so many ACs or air conditioning systems to cool down the heat. So what do? They just make sure that all the windows are open, and they use the cold air from outside to come inside and to heat, to cool down the machines. But all this heat that's generated, they say, well, it would be stupid from our side to lose this energy because, the heat, it's so cold outside and there's so many houses and villages that need this heat. Why should we waste it? So what they do is they gather this heat and they channel it to other parts of the city so it can be used as heating for the houses, right? And so there's a circular economy where nothing is left behind, nothing is wasted, but it has to reflect every country's reality. So in Iceland, it's hot, it's cold. So they use that heat that generated and they use the outside cold to be able to create the circular economy. Then you have to find for every single country or location, what does it make sense? What do I have enough of? What do I need? And how can I make sure that one solution is going to be able to empower and help another one, the needs. So we can make it so you can be completely independent and have less impact in the environment.
All right. Thank you so much, Ayumi. And we're going to go right ahead to Laren and Serena at the Benin English International School. Would like to know what your question is. And Ayumi, you're sharing such great insight and would also like to get as many questions as possible from both our schools and the ones that are joining us online. So it would really be great if you could also kind of keep them a little, I don't want you to keep them too brief because we want to get all the insight, but just, a little a brief so that you can also get as many of them in as possible. Yes.
Okay, so our question is, innovation is generally a good thing because it creates a kind of comfort. However, how can we develop a tech innovation in such a way that it does not negatively impact economic, social, and environmental well-being of local communities?
Well, thanks for the question. I think I answered it a little bit on the question that we've discussed before. We have to see how is this technology going to be affecting, who is this for, and then how is it affecting the environment, and then how is it affecting the human rights? So you have to obviously push forward to have always new innovations, new technologies that are going to be answering problems that global society needs, but also have to zoom in to the local person, say, okay, how can I make that technology benefit me? How can it, benefit my school, my company, my country, my nation? And so these are the questions that developers have to have, that the investors have to have, but also ideas that the beneficiaries can have. Okay, this is what I need, and this is how I can use that. If it's something open source, to piggyback on it, and then make sure that this solution can also be modeled and used for myself.
All right, let's now find out what Akonde and Vince at the Ajara Senior Grammar School in Lagos would like to know. Guys, take it away. Please ask Ayumi your question.
How often have new innovations been made to eradicate problems that the others have caused?
So if I understand right, how often is innovation? I think innovations, the whole object, the whole goal of innovations is to be able to eradicate a problem, right? You have a problem, how can we solve it? So it's a constant innovation because there are always new problems coming up. But we have to make sure that these problems and these innovations, these solutions that are coming, they really have to help, the whole of the population and not make the gaps even bigger or It's not going to be at the detriment of if you find a solution for a problem, but the solution is going to be making the problem for someone else even bigger. It's not a real solution, right? So we have to make sure that the solutions are benefiting people, but not at the detriment of others.
Wonderful. And now we're going to hand over to Sana and Neil at the ICS London School. Guys, please take it away and ask your question.
Our question is environmental impact ever more important than people's rights, or do they ever go hand in hand?
I say they go hand in hand. You can't privilege, for example, the climate, and if there are people dying on the side just because of the sake of climate. However, if you look at the future generations, they won't be able to live in a world if the climate has been destroyed by us, the generations before. So we have to find a solution that combines both. I think we are living in this world, and we have to leave it at the same situation or much better for the generations to come, for our children, for the survival of the species. And we can't just say it's either one or the other. It's both together. We have to have that all the time in mind.
All right, wonderful. Now, Ayumi, we have a question here coming from our chat, and let me urge you, if you're joining us online, guys, that you're also part of this community. We want to hear from you, so do share your question in the Q&A section. We have somebody here who says they are in Portugal, Azambuja, and these are students from there. Our question is, what is the role of open source innovation in accelerating sustainable solutions for developing countries, Ayumi?
Oi, Portugal! So I love Portugal. It's one of my favorite places. So open source is great because you can have access to the technology, and then you can use it as a framework to build upon. And then, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, because you already have that framework done. But then use to build upon, to answer and to adapt it to your specific needs, right? So for African countries, they can have all the work that's been done before to have access to technology, use it as an open source, and then build on it. It's going to be, and then really think about, what am I going to build? Once again, you have innovations to find solutions for a specific problem. So what's the problem that I want to find a solution for, and how can I make this technology build and respond to that specific dilemma? So that's how open source is done.
I was taking a sip of water and I switched off my mic, but a question coming in from the international school Briben in Tanzania. They say, which of the sustainable development goals do you believe technology can accelerate the fastest, and which are the hardest to impact?
I think all of them are important. And I think the sustainable goal where 15 also, when you all have to work together, it's very important, because there's not one specific field or sector that will find all the solutions. But I also feel very strongly about Sustainable Development Goal 5, because I think without gender equality across all sections, we will never be able to be sustainable. Because if you're not, if you're leaving behind half of the population, it will never work. So when you bring in the talent of all the women, and we make sure that they are making the technologies, that they are, educating, that they are educated, and they bring in value to the communities, I think this is one of the main things we have to go forward with.
Absolutely. Now, Ayumi Moore Aoki, thank you so much for such great insight, for pouring your passion into us really this morning. Thank you so much for everything you shared, and for also engaging with the students as they were also, sharing their thought-provoking questions. I really just want to thank you very much, and also ask that please continue engaging in the Q&A section and answering more of the questions that are coming in there. But right now, to conclude, this campus will focus on an essential aspect that touches on both individual and collective responsibility. This is becoming an actor of change. Starts with our personal choices and our approach to innovation. Now, global citizenship education helps us connect these choices to broader global challenges, enabling us to act in an informed, responsible, and supportive way. Now, to speak on this topic, we're delighted to welcome Yelena Zelenovic, who is a program specialist of the Global Citizenship and Peace Education Division at UNESCO. Yelena works on international education programs linked to peace, human rights, and sustainable development. She's currently involved in implementing UNESCO's recent recommendations in these areas. That is 2023 recommendation on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. Now, before joining UNESCO, she worked with the United Nations on peace building programs, supporting teams in more than 20 countries across Africa, Europe, and Asia Pacific. She also worked for the Australian government's aid agency, including in Papua New Guinea and Timor-Leste. Now, let's go right into our next discussion. Thank you so much for joining us, Yelena. And let's go straight into, the first question that we have for you, which is, what does it mean to be an active citizen in a globalized and constantly evolving world?
Thanks so much. It's such a pleasure to be here and share with students from around the world. So first of all, I think, what is really global citizenship? It is a concept which is very much about the sense of belonging to a common, global, interconnected humanity. So it's very much about a mindset. It doesn't come with a passport, and it does not take away from your local and national belonging and community. But it really recognizes that today more than ever, we are not only citizens of our country, but citizens of this world, and we have the power and the responsibility to act accordingly. So I think there are kind of three key points in terms of what it means to be an active citizen in the global world today, and you kind of touch on them a little bit in your introduction. First one, I think, is realizing that your everyday actions really do have the power to influence not just those around you, but those far away. And you have an incredible reach, something that could not have been envisaged just like a decade ago. So that's the very first thing. The second thing is that you need to be informed. If you want to be responsible about how you influence others and what difference you make, I think you need to think about what you do and be as informed as possible. And the third one is basically being a conscious citizen. So trying to work for the benefit of that humanity, and to contribute towards a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world. So just a little bit on these three aspects. So the first one is realizing that your actions do have the power to influence the world. What does that mean? That means that, for example, a very obvious choice is on the internet, in the digital space, on social media, or on many, many fora that you might access. You might write something, and just a few minutes or even a few seconds later, people from all around the world, somewhere really far that you haven't even thought about, may read this. And this might affect them. They might very easily share that with others, and it can really have a snowball effect. But then it's also beyond the digital space. Every day, what do you decide to buy or what do you decide to consume? Where does that come from? What kind of sustainability choices went into producing that product? And how much of that do you want to buy, and how do you influence those around you to make such choices? And maybe thirdly, how do you spend your free time? Do you spend your free time to champion any causes? Do you spend your free time to, find out or contribute to some organizations or to businesses? And what do they represent? How do you spend your money? So all of these are examples of these daily actions that really go beyond just the immediate surrounding. The second aspect that I was saying was about being informed. So that very much means that you need to try and find out as much about the issues that you are going to act on. Do not just do something without thinking, because it can have consequences. And I think UNESCO, which is where we work, has really invested for decades on promoting the importance on things such as media and information literacy or critical thinking skills. So understanding, for example, that what you read is not necessarily the truth. And what does it mean to be part of kind of mis or disinformation, hate speech, and other things? So I think that's about being informed and really feeling that responsibility that, if you want to engage on something, try and find out as much about it as possible. And the third aspect is basically saying that since you have the power to make a difference, even in a very small way, or to influence others, try and make it in the interest of humanity and in the interest of solving so many of these global issues and problems and challenges that we face today. So again, UNESCO and this recommendation that I work on, which is the 2023 recommendation on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development, has a number of these kind of guiding principles to challenge us and the education systems to contribute to justice and peace and sustainable development. And one that I just wanted to quote for now is instilling an ethic of global citizenship and shared responsibility for peace, human rights, and sustainable development for the benefit of all. So that means try and think of the ways that you can help solve both local and global issues, which often are interconnected. And, you know, just because you might think that your little act doesn't have a big influence, well, actually, they all add up. You know, you influence your friends, you influence your community, people around you, your parents, your teachers, passers-by, they see what you do. You can also, as you said, in digital space, be read by many, many people even far away from you. So actually, these choices add up, and I think they have the power to create a positive momentum. And the last thing I wanted to say on this, and I mean, maybe we'll discuss it a bit more in the questions, but the kind of actions that you can take really vary, and we would never want to be prescriptive. It very much depends on, you know, your context, what do you care about, what is your community facing, and where do you feel comfortable to engage, and what do you feel passionate about. But you can act at your school, you can act in your community, you can act in the digital spaces, you can act by connecting to decision makers. There are often formal fora, so youth councils, youth representatives to different things, or by writing letters to the different kind of representatives and decision makers. And finally, regional and global fora. I mean, the UN itself often has global meetings where it invites youth representatives from around the world. You've spoken about the Model UN. We have networks at UNESCO, for example, Youth SDG, so Sustainable Development Goal 4, Youth and Student Network, where every year about 100 to 150 young people from around the world are selected to be on this and to kind of be involved in shaping some of UNESCO's policies. So there's a plethora of ways of doing it. And I really, I would love to hear about what it is that you are already doing in your schools, because I'm sure nobody here is starting from scratch.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing, even the questions that they have. But thank you so much for unpacking it in that way, and explaining what it means being an active global citizen and giving those practical example of what it actually looks like on the ground. But how can education students now learn to be active citizens through their experience at school? Yelena.
Thanks so much. So I think, for most of us who are lucky enough to have access to school, which is all of you here, and of course, not every child today is able to do it. And I hope we will all work towards every child being able to access school. But, we do spend so much of our time at school, years of our life, that really becomes like the primary place, I feel, where we connect, where we learn, where we be inspired. And this means that education systems and schools have a huge responsibility, actually, in how they educate us and what tools they give us to become responsible, active citizens. And so, again, this UNESCO recommendation that I was talking about gives a lot of examples and guiding principles as to how education systems around the world can be truly transformative and help learners to hold their duty bearers to account and to really realize these rights, because we are all, as citizens of the world, right holders, and our governments owe us to do everything they can to promote our human rights. So a few examples as to how education can give us those tools and how you as learners can benefit and use this as a kind of a springboard to become active global citizens. I mean, overall, it is not just what you learn, but that's very important, but it's also how you learn and what do you observe in your school environment. So some examples. One, firstly, by showing us inclusivity in terms of access. That already teaches us a lot. Are our schools doing enough to try and enable students from different backgrounds, including marginalized ones to access education. So if we see this, I think that already gives us a lens on inclusivity and human rights of all. And maybe if this is not yet happening in your schools, you can be thinking about what more can be done to allow all students in our community to access this education. The second thing that students can learn through schools is really by observing and hopefully the schools practicing and modeling the participatory, inclusive, respective environments and principles in the very operation of the school system. So not so much in kind of, again, what are they teaching you every day, but how do the schools operate? From school governance, is there some kind of a democratic, participatory option for different even students through their representatives to participate in some decisions about the schools? How does the school respond to violence, for example? Are there protocols? Do we know how to stop bullying and violence? And are they respected? And what kind of environments do they provide to make everybody feel welcome and free from discrimination? So that's the second one that I think is really important. The third one is now a little bit about what do we learn. So I think schools should definitely go beyond teaching, basic literacy and numeracy, but looking at other skills, often these soft skills that we talk about. So peaceful resolution of conflict, for example, understanding another point of view and providing constructive feedback, respect for diversity, collaboration and teamwork, empathy and compassion. I think these are skills that are just as important to learn at school as are kind of literacy, numeracy, and basic content. And then still on content, I think we can learn a lot by our schools addressing the relevant themes to our context. So again, issues of, for example, difficult pasts and being able to talk about that at school in a constructive way, human rights, peace, sustainable development that we've been talking about. These are all the issues that schools can teach us about and can inspire us to learn more about. Languages, and also putting the emphasis on interdisciplinary projects and understanding the interconnections between different themes and subjects. I also think that what's important at school that we should kind of learn by doing is a learner-centered way of teaching and learning, participatory. So it's not just hierarchical. It's not just a kind of teacher telling you and looking down on you and saying, write this down and memorize it. It's about a more democratic, a more two-way way of engaging through active projects, through being able to also lead on what you should be learning about. And finally, I think another opportunity of learning is that even though most of our learning happens at school and in classroom when you are a school student, we can also learn that actually learning goes much beyond that. So schools can already show us how places from local parks to heritage sites to museums to community institutions, libraries, civil society organizations are other places of learning and can be the first bridge to connecting us to these places, which we, of course, can then continue outside of school. These are some ways that I think you can learn at school how to be an active citizen. And I would like to challenge all of you after this to kind of reflect to what extent is your school already mirroring and modeling these behaviors and principles? And if not, what kind of discussions you can have amongst yourselves and with your teachers as to where more of this could be done to empower you as an active and responsible global citizen.
Now, thank you so much, Yelena. Now, I'm going to ask one last question as we now get ready to engage with the students. So get your questions ready, guys, as well as those of you who are joining us online. You can start getting those questions ready in the Q&A section in the chat box. So now, briefly, as we wrap up this part, what is the role of innovation, Yelena, when it comes to global citizenship?
Thanks. I mean, we've heard quite a bit about innovation before. Very importantly, what is innovation? It's a new way of thinking, understanding, or doing things. It's not just about huge technological innovations like, from the Industrial Revolution to the kind of internet and digital to artificial intelligence or renewable energy. Like these were kind of huge innovations, but it's very much about day-to-day changes, which allow us to do things better, more easily and for the benefit of humanity. And again, this is where it's back to the global citizenship. A lot of the innovations can help us to solve some of the problems faced by humanity. We've heard a lot about the solutions to sustainable development. There are, of course, other solutions which are about all of the sustainable development goals. And education obviously has a very important role to play, and I think it goes two ways. I mean, innovation itself has already affected education, and when you look at education environments and schools of today, they look very different than those decades ago. I mean, already having access, for example, to digital learning, being able to find out information so quickly through the internet, and being able to learn online. I mean, the way that you are connecting today, but also the way that most of us had to connect for quite some time during COVID. The way that some of the technologies allow us to tailor learning to the specific needs and contexts of students, something that would be much more challenging for one human teacher to do, let's say for 30 students in a class. All of these are examples of how technology has, and technological innovation has affected education. But of course, it goes the other way around, because education teaches us the skills that enable us and incentivize us to become innovators, and hopefully innovators for public good. So teaching us not only the technical skills to become, from future programmers, engineers in new areas, in renewables, etc. But I think really importantly, teaching us these soft skills again that really are key to being an innovator. And they are things like curiosity, passion for learning, and I really think kind of ability to learn, because I think we will discover more and more, and especially for you as you start your careers, that you will probably have to continually learn new things, because the world will keep evolving and what you learned at school will not be enough. So learning how to learn and how to be kind of agile and adaptable and always curious, and not scared of failure as well, because failure is just part and parcel of life, and especially part and parcel of innovation. I think these are the things that schools and education systems can really teach us. And finally, this kind of responsibility towards the world, so that hopefully when we're thinking of what are the gaps, what could we contribute to, we're not only thinking about kind of profit, but we're also thinking about the social good, and social justice, and peace and sustainable development, and how can we basically contribute to the sustainable development goals in one way or another.
Thank you so much, Yelena, for sharing such empowering insight, with our students today. And now we're going to go into our Q&A section. We're going to start with the students, and I'd like to just kindly ask that you keep your answers brief with them now, so that we can get as many questions coming in from them as possible. But your insight has really been truly empowering. I'm going to ask Sana and Neil from the ICS London to start. Guys, please go ahead and ask Yelena your question.
Okay, so our question is, what about people who have no access to internet? How can you inform them on becoming a sustainable citizen in the modern world?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, actually, it's a very good point that sometimes, technological innovation can both be a bridge helping some of the most marginalized, and yet has proven to sometimes actually deepen the inequalities and the differences. And I think the COVID time has really seen that those who don't have the internet have suffered much more. I think, the internet access is spreading all around the world, and it's really exciting to see that some of the poorest areas around the world actually do have internet, perhaps not the same high speed, but mobile connectivity and even internet connectivity are spreading, and I think will continue to spread. And one of the things you can think about if you end up working in this space is how can we actually contribute to it spreading even more. In the absence of that, obviously some kind of more old school ways of spreading information. I mean, there are community gatherings, dialogues that can be organized at school level. So it doesn't all have to depend on internet. I think, working with the community centers, doing kind of the more old school, but I think equally powerful advocacy campaigns that are through visuals, through art, for example, putting the posters up, being in the streets and talking to those around you, and doing some of these kind of exchanges that are also live and physical exchanges where people from different communities go and meet others and are able to exchange experiences, through actual meetings. These could be ways while we wait for the internet access to spread even more, which I think it will, because it keeps increasing all the time.
Okay, wonderful. Let's now head over to Mishra and Kumari at the Kerala Public School, all the way in India. Please go ahead and ask your questions, guys.
So, can global citizenship really exist when countries still prioritize national interest over their global responsibility?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, this is a very complicated question. And I mean, you will see, as I was trying to say, the concept of global citizenship is not meant to go against national citizenship or interest. It's not trying to kind of put a hierarchy and saying, you should not care about your own community or your own country. That said, we have seen recently a lot of trends that have gone against the kind of overall international solidarity and kind of the global peace. And this, of course, is something that worries a lot of us. But I think that also means that we all have a responsibility to try and go against those trends, to try to showcase that actually caring about our own country and our own local community does not need to mean that we don't care about the others. Because actually, in the end, we will all feel the negative effects of what's happening somewhere else. Perhaps not immediately, but a war in one place is very, very likely to end up affecting us, at least through economics, if not through many other effects, difficulty of traveling to other places, the price of some things that have been produced internationally and that require international transport. So it's really thinking about, again, the benefits of international solidarity and trying to advocate for that and do your thing to say that our choice is to actually both love our community, love our country, but also think very much about the peace and sustainable development at the global scale. And so we, as democratic citizens, as future leaders of this world, we have a choice. Are we going to fight for those beliefs?
Right. And we also now will take a question from Akonde and Vince at the Ajaro Senior Grammar School in Lagos, Nigeria. Guys, please take it away and ask Yelena your question.
My question is, how do UNESCO intend to help young innovators around the world?
How does UNESCO intend to help new innovators around the world?
Well, that's a huge question. I'm not sure that I have all the answers for how UNESCO can help all the innovators. I mean, certainly in the sector that I work, which is education, but do remember that UNESCO also has a whole sector on science, and I don't necessarily know everything that they do. And I would really encourage you to look into what UNESCO science colleagues are doing as well. But in education, I mean, the way that we hope to support you is by working with the governments around the world to make education as transformative and as able to contribute to these concepts of peace, justice, and sustainable development. So this recommendation that I was talking about kind of provides a set of guiding principles and learning objectives, and UNESCO is trying to work with every member state, so every country, because all of the countries actually unanimously ended up approving this recommendation, to incentivize them, to kind of tell them, what are you doing now about implementing this recommendation in your country? What are you doing to make your education systems and your schools be the environments that can support learning in the interest of global solidarity, justice, peace, and sustainable development? So we are really trying to kind of, for each country, look at what are your needs, how can, what kind of additional technical advice can UNESCO provide in order to help you implement what you yourself, as the government said, was an important objective for us. And finally, UNESCO also has a program of associated schools. So it's called ASP.NET Schools that has already more than 10,000 school members from around the world. And it's always open to more schools joining. And these are the schools that have a kind of a direct relationship with UNESCO, where we try to pass a lot of our knowledge and ideas and guidance and involve them in a lot of the programs and work with teachers and students more directly. And they're often the schools that are the first ones to kind of innovate and pilot some of the UNESCO principles. And so I would encourage you to see what are those ASP.NET associated program UNESCO schools in your country, if your school is one of those, and what does it take to become one of those schools, because maybe we can be more directly connected.
Right. And now let's wrap it up with Larine and Selena, who are at the English International School in Benin. Please go ahead and ask Yelena your question.
So how could a balance be reached between what
what needs to be done using tech and innovations and the awareness of the negative impacts that these have.
So the balance between the use of technology and the negative impact? I mean, this is a very hard question that I don't think a single person can answer. It really depends on what technology is being used, what is the goal of that technology. I think we heard a little bit about, some technology, what is the, let's say, environmental impact of that technology? What is the possible gain of that technology? Who does it affect? Does it have, for example, the objective of some of these kind of positive concepts that I was talking about, global justice? Is it simply about profit? So I think there are a lot of questions that should be asked for every technological innovation as a kind of a checklist. And I'm sure these already often exist. Often a new technology has to pass a certain environmental standard to be approved by the government. In order, for example, to be financed, because often when you innovate at the beginning, you do not have enough money to actually fully develop the technology. So you're trying to go and raise resources. You have to convince some of those who will invest in it why they should do so, and there again, you need to think about what's going to be your reasoning. And it should not be just about the profit. It should be about, again, what are some of those impacts, both at the local level and the global level. But certainly there is no mathematical formula that can be given. And this is why this is both so complicated and so kind of exciting, because a lot of these biggest questions in humanity, there is no black and white answer, right? So there is only kind of a gray space, and we have to navigate it as a common humanity. And I think over time we are learning more and more how we need to think about things that perhaps previously we did not sufficiently think about. So as William said, in some of the previous generations, there was a lot less thought about this idea of future generations and the right of those who are not even yet born. But now we think more about it. There were also some things that we knew a lot less about of impact, from so often things used to be produced and we used to find out that actually they have something poisonous in them, or they have a negative consequence that we didn't think about. And I think, we keep adding new learning and new questions that now go into all of these choices. And again, my concluding point would be that it's very much about learning to be this kind of critical and responsible citizens, because that will enable us to ask the right questions and ultimately make, on the balance of things, the right decision. And perhaps we do something by piloting it on a smaller scale and seeing the impact that it has there. And often that will enable us to learn a lot more and to see, okay, do we continue to spread this? Do we need to stop it and think again? Do we need to make changes before it goes further? So, not immediately starting at the large scale where you can no longer kind of go back, but this continuous kind of questioning and learning and adapting, those are some of the things I would also recommend.
All right, Yelena Zelanovic, thank you so much for introducing us to Education for Global Citizenship. Such great insight that you shared today with our students. And I also just want to thank the students too for being so engaging, for asking such great questions. And, I also just want to thank all our previous speakers, because we're just about to go into a part that is going to kind of test how much you've learned today. Before we close this campus, we'd like to invite you to take part in an interactive quiz to test your knowledge of today's topics. The quiz, and you have a minute to answer this, right? The question is, an innovation is considered sustainable when it, one, this is A, is popular and trendy, B, meets a human need and respects the environment, C, is fast and profitable only, or D, completely replaces older technologies. So let's go. Yes, we have 2 people who answered A, but 34 people out of the 37 answered B. B is the correct answer, guys. Well done to you. An innovation is considered sustainable when it meets a human need and respects the environment. Well done, guys. Well done. Congratulations. You got it right. And we're going straight into the next one, which is, how can young people contribute to sustainable innovation? A minute to go. First question, or rather first answer A, is by making conscious choice and thinking about environmental and social impact. B, by following trends blindly. C, by always using the fastest, newest technology. Or D, by ignoring the consequences of their actions. Perfect answer. How can young people contribute to sustainable innovation? The right answer is A, by making conscious choices and thinking about environmental and social impacts. Well done, guys. Congratulations. Yay. Everyone got it right. The next one, which is also a multiple choice question. You have 1 minute to answer this. Which of the following actions show that you're an active citizen? A, taking part in a neighborhood cleanup. B, raising awareness among your friends about sustainable habits. C, buying the latest phone just because it's trendy. Or D, voting or participating in school projects. Okay, I can see it's already popped up. We have, 28 people having answered A, 37 B, and 22 answering D. You're right. The correct answers are A, B, and D. C is incorrect because, buying the latest iPhone or latest phone and just because it's trendy, that is not the right answer. But congratulations, guys. The next question, which is a brainstorming question, we will give you 2 minutes to answer this one. What is one habit you have that helps you as an active citizen? You're going to type in your answers, right? And I'll read out some of them. I think, some of our speakers who are still here will also then get to, comment on some of the answers that we're going to see. So what is one habit you have that helps you act as an active citizen? All right, helping the needy, participating in charities. Yeah, we have quite a couple of people saying charities, helping others, recycling, reusing items. Yeah, recycling, reusing is coming up quite a bit. Spreading awareness, raising awareness, and helping the community, helping share awareness, spreading awareness. Yes, I can definitely tell you, listen to Yelena, helping people, with bad habits, voting. Yes, we're seeing that recurring. Eating home cultivated food, cleaning water bodies, cleaning the beach. Yelena, I'm not too sure whether you'd like to share, to actually, comment on some of these that we're seeing coming up. Please feel free to comment. This is to our speakers. Comment on some of these ones that you're seeing. What are your thoughts?
Great. I mean, seeing such a variety, as I was saying, there really isn't a prescriptive list. So it's great to see such different ones. I would just say, really being conscious that you have this power and responsibility. And I think, when you see something that's wrong, when you read something that's hateful, that's misinformation, don't just let it go by as well. Consider, is there some way that you can change somebody else's mind? And I love the fact that a lot of you are looking at, environmental issues, which are very, very present in your community, and you are already starting with very, very concrete acts. A lot of you are looking at engaging with your community. So I would say find out which are the organizations that exist around you. What are the kind of community initiatives that exist? Do you want to join those so that you're not alone? Or is there a gap and you're going to champion a new one? So I think it's really impressive that so much is already going on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's go on to our last question, which is also a brainstorming question today. Let's just now see, what the question is. We have 2 minutes exactly to answer this. Share as many as you possibly can. What is one new idea or invention that could make a positive difference for the environment or for society? Grouping them now, by similarity: moving cars by using water, cars with air, moving cars by water, planting trees on occasion, a UFO that collects trash from the environment, robots that can pick up trash outside, robots. Yes, we have energy sharing neighborhoods, increased use of treadmills that generate energy through kinetic energy, floorboards that produce energy when you step on them, turning footsteps into energy. Brilliant. William, let's just hear what you have to say about some of these ideas that they're sharing here.
Yes, I think they are very interesting. A lot of them are talking about energy, transportation, etc. I would like also to highlight the fact that we talk about trees, and sometimes we think about big innovations like, we need to sequester carbon and have new technologies. But sometimes the technology exists and they can be as simple as a tree. And then it's how we see the whole system, and sometimes solutions are simple, but I see that all these students have quite a good imagination, and I think we can make good things.
Absolutely. They've got really, really brilliant suggestions, guys. Well done. Really happy with some of the ideas that we've seen you guys coming up with. A subject about sustainability, smart recycler, reducing the carbon footprint, spreading awareness, starting a social media campaign, advocating for change, using electric cars, making awareness on environmental conservation, eradicating all such agents and promote racism. Yes, creating environmental conservations, guys. Thank you much for sharing such great insights. Thank you very much for such great engagement. And this is, how we come to wrap up our, quiz, which was so exciting. Thank you for your participation, guys, sharing such brilliant answers. Thank you very much to our speakers as well, to both you, Yelena and William, for also contributing and, just sharing your thoughts on some of those brilliant answers that we saw coming in. So well done, guys. Well done. Congratulations to you. And this is really now how we come to the end of our session today. We're coming to the end of this UNESCO campus, building the future, innovation, and sustainable development. We encourage our students and our schools to continue reflecting on these themes in whatever form it takes. We invite you to collaborate and actively contribute to building a more sustainable and responsible future. The UNESCO campus team will soon share useful resources to further enrich your reflections, as well as the link to the replay of this session. Now, yes, UNESCO would like to thank everyone who participated in this campus. This is the students and their teachers for their participation and rich contributions. William Savard, Ayumi Mo Aoki, and Yelena Zelenovic, who took the time to share their expertise and answer your questions, and all the people who participated in this preparation and organization of this campus. Now, UNESCO also thanks Tech for All by Huawei, who are the partners of the campus program. Now, this campus is officially over. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you at future UNESCO campuses. Guys, good day, and thank you so much for participating. You were just amazing. Bye-bye. Bye.